Hey everybody, it's Jessica from Grow Food Nation, and I'm super excited to be here with you on the Grow Food Not Grass Summit. Today, we're going to talk about cultivating resilience into your garden so that you can grow the most amazing food that's super nourishing for you and your family while not having to worry about pests and disease. So let's dive in. Okay, here we are. Crafting garden resilience, how to feed your plants and support the soil. Just a presentation overview. We're going to start with getting the soil and ecosystem right. Then we're going to talk about healthy plants. And lastly, we'll talk about a garden health protocol you can use at home. Getting the soil right. This just covers what I like to call MOM, which is minerals, organic matter, and microbes. To begin with, here are some of the ways I like to build my garden beds. I like to kind of layer it in like a chocolate cake. I pull off to the side my topsoil. Usually it depends on how if you're building a bed from the ground up, if you have a raised bed that you're filling in, or if you are double digging or something like that. Regardless of how you're building your bed, I like to mix in topsoil, mineral blend that I'll give you the recipe for, some rock dust that's either granite or basalt based, and good quality compost, either that you make yourself or that you get from a trusted source, and insect frass. Then after I've got all my goodies mixed into my bed, then I like to top it off with a good mulch to make sure I'm keeping the soil covered. And we'll talk about why that's important later, but it's one of the foundations of protecting your microbes and getting good ecosystem happening in there. So the mineral blend recipe, we have rock phosphate, we have green sand, azomite, which is another rock dust, calcium carbonate, and gypsum, and sea salt has lots of trace elements, and then kelp, because it's really beneficial to boost your plants and the ecology of the soil, humates for a source of carbon, and alfalfa meal, but make sure it's non-GMO, good quality compost, and then sulfomag, which is sulfur, potassium, magnesium. Sometimes it's called K-mag. And when you mix all these up, it makes a really good blend for your garden. And this is good if you just want a general blend. Some people like to do soil tests, which is highly recommended if you're trying to tailor it. This blend, however, can be applied to any soil because it's a good balance already. And these just work into the soil, and when you boost the microbes, all of these minerals are available for them to digest and feed to the plants. So this is one of my favorite recipes. So here we are at the mineral application rate, and it's about 1,000 pounds per acre for this recipe. So if you're trying to figure out how that works out to your size garden space, that's 1,000 pounds per acre. So there's 43,560 square feet in an acre. So you're going to divide 1,000 by that, multiply it by the square feet of your bed, and then you multiply that by 16. And then this will give you the total ounces you need for each garden bed. And this recipe makes about 40 pounds of amendment. So depending on what size you're working with, this might get you through a whole year. This might get you through a season. So there's this type of way to work out the application rate, which is really simple. You can also just sprinkle it in as you build your bed, and don't worry about it. As long as you are just sprinkling in lightly, it's going to be hard to overdo it. As for mulching materials, these are some of my favorite mulching materials. We have straw, shredded leaves, aged wood chips, grass clippings, more compost depending on how much it's broken down, newspaper, but make sure it's not glossy, and same with cardboard for making sure it's not glossy. And also with cardboard, I like to make sure that I remove the tape. You can also use cover crops as a living mulch. These are really good for really boosting biology because of all the exudates that are coming out of the roots. And when it comes to shredded leaves, I say shredded specifically because They will blow off if they're not shredded. And when it comes to mulch, one of the things I'm going to talk about is moisturizing, keeping your soil moist. And that's where mulch comes in. It keeps your soil moist, but depending on how dry it is when you start out with, when you first apply it, you've got to really make sure that you saturate it and get it really good glued into place, especially with leaves and straw. Make sure that they're really, really hydrated, and then they'll act as an amazing sponge to keep your soil moist. So when it comes to the soil, what we're trying to go for is a healthy gut for your plant, because there's something called the soil food web, and there's all these microbes in it that are going to decrease the energy that the plant needs to absorb nutrients. And the plants love microbial metabolites because they're super bioavailable. So the way this works is this nutrient cycling to create a happy plant is that you have a plant, and then when that plant photosynthesizes, it puts out exudates from its roots into the soil, and then this attracts and feeds microbes, and then when you have all these microbes, they attract bigger microbes that like to eat the smaller microbes. And then all of this is happening. You have microbes using the bathroom, you have bigger microbes eating smaller microbes, and microbes dying, and all this kind of stuff. And so these microbial metabolites then feed the plant. And so you have this really positive feedback loop happening where the plant is building soil, and the soil is making the plant healthy, or the microbes in the soil are making the plant healthy, and then the plant has further energy to keep pumping and building soil. So this is what I like to call like a healthy plant gut. This is the rhizosphere, which is the area around the roots, which is super rich in microbes. And this is our goal as gardeners. Then what our job is as gardeners is to support this ecosystem. And how do you do that? You do that by reducing disturbance and keeping the soil covered. So you don't want the soil to ever dry out. You don't want to expose it to a lot of UV light. You don't want to expose it to a lot of oxygen by turning it over. What I like to do is if you need to disturb the soil, do it once when you are building the bed. And then if you're building like raised beds or different things like that, you can really build up the tilth or the structure of the soil by living roots that make it to where it doesn't compact. The idea is just don't step on your garden, don't push on it. Make sure you are avoiding compaction. And then if you have an in-ground bed, I like to use a broad fork. So you're lifting the soil, but you're not turning it over. And so what we're trying to do here is support our microbial kind of allies in the soil. And what do they need? They need food, they need shelter, they need the minerals, and they need water. And when it comes to your source of water, you want to make sure you're using water that doesn't have chlorine or chloramine. And all city tap water is going to have this. So if you have tap water, there's really easy kind of adaptations you can do by just getting a hose-end water filter for the garden. They have them, they're amazing, and they'll really make a difference because these substances are put into the water to kill microbes. And when it comes to our garden, we're actually trying to support microbes. Also, you want to remember to water the whole area of your garden and not just around the base of the plant, because when you just water around the base of the plant, you're restricting how far the microbes can move because they need the soil to be moist in order to get around in it and go ahead and start mining for minerals and bringing them back to your plant. So you want to make sure you're watering the whole garden. Then I want to talk about inoculation and stimulation. So you want to boost the diversity. And then when you have the diversity, you also want to boost the numbers of microbes. So to do this, I like to do a soil drench early spring and late fall that's full of microbes and biostimulants and carbon, which we'll talk about biostimulants in a little bit. And what this is doing is really pumping up the nutrient cycling and soil building qualities in your garden and you can also do this by getting some living roots in there to help integrate this and feed the microbes as well. So that's not just you feeding it, the plants are also feeding it. So as long as you're keeping living roots, you're going to really attract all kinds of diversity of microbes. And then you're doing your best to add in all the things microbes need and to take care of them. And so you are effectively building soil and helping the nutrients to cycle by supporting all the little tiny living things in it. So when I mentioned biostimulants, what you're doing with these is you're feeding and increasing your microbes. So some examples of biostimulants are kelp or seaweed, extracts or meals like the granular kind of products they have out there. Carbohydrates and sugars such as molasses are good. I know some people talk about their grandparents sometimes sprinkling sugar, just some table sugar, around the base of tomato plants because they said it would make the tomatoes sweeter. And in a lot of ways, that's very true. They're kind of boosting the microbes around in the rhizosphere, and then that is giving you a much more flavorful tomato because the plant has so much access to lots of nutrition. Because the microbes are getting excited from the sugar, and then they're going and they're getting all these nutrients and they're releasing it in a plant available form. So then, and there's also humic acids, which is like a carbon source and food source for microbes. You can use a fish or crustacean product. That really boosts a lot of your fungi in the soil because it's a more complex carbon structure. And also sea salt or a low sodium ocean product. They sell those specifically for garden. If you don't want to, increase your sodium levels too much, but if you just put a little bit of sea salt, it's not going to bother the sodium levels, but it will add a lot of trace elements. And this really helps give microbes something to build their body out of. They can't just live off of carbs. They also need the minerals that I said before. So these biostimulants, they really help to kind of stimulate the microbes in the system. I also have a bonus kind of ebook that's ecological garden primer recipes, so you can do it yourself and make all kinds of awesome things to put in your garden. You can check that out in the bonus section. And then when it comes to some of the reasons that you want to stimulate your microbes and increase their numbers is because higher up in the soil food web, you start attracting things like earthworms. And earthworms are super awesome when it comes to building soil structure in your garden and helping to really get a lot of this air that you need for the microorganisms to breathe. And it just builds lots of pathways. And they also are taxis for microbes. So the little microbes, they can't move very far on their own. But when they hit your rod an earthworm, you get all kinds of diversity of microbes that can travel through your soil. So you really want to build up the microbes so that you can attract these guys, these earthworms, into your garden. Okay, so let's move on to healthy plants. So you want to really build immunity, and some of the best ways to build healthy plants when you're not necessarily starting out with the most awesome soil is to foliar feed. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. Innate immunity. When it comes to plant health, and a lot of people struggle with insects and disease only come when there's food that's suited for them. So insects can only eat sick plants, and disease can only infect sick plants. When a plant is strong and healthy and it has everything it needs, its own immune system is enough to defend itself and doesn't even attract these pests and disease in the first place. So how do you do this? You have mineral-rich soil plus biology gives you a healthy plant. When you have a healthy plant, you have healthy soil. Then this creates that positive feedback loop to further support a healthy plant. So a thriving rhizosphere gives your plant more energy and resources to create complex compounds that will help it protect itself and reduce the potential for infestation to occur. So this is an example of a really healthy plant. There's a few ways to identify that your plant is really healthy. By the eye, you can look at your leaves, and what you want to look for is a glossy sheen on your leaves. You want your plants to be fat and healthy because that glossy sheen is lipids and fats that the plant is building. It's called the waxy cuticle, and this is a physical barrier for your plant that protects it from any airborne pathogens or pests. And so it creates a really thick kind of cuticle. And what happens is this is only able to be formed when your plant has enough energy. Because what happens is when we sit around and get food like spoon fed, lots of cakes and cookies and stuff like that, what happens to us is similar to what happens to plant. And that's what we want in this case, because the microbes are feeding the plant all this good minerals and nutrients and stuff like that. And the plant doesn't have to work so hard. So the plant gets to allocate all these resources it would have to use otherwise to get its nutrients, but now it can allocate them to building up some physical defenses for itself and creating the lipids and stuff like that to deposit into its leaves. And that's why sometimes you'll notice midsummer your zucchini plants, they'll start out like this in the spring, but when the summer comes and this heat stress happens and your plants have to start utilizing all of their reserves, and they go ahead and utilize the energy stored in this fat, and their leaves will get dull, and that's when they start getting droopy and they become susceptible to disease. So we want to make sure we're keeping the soil moist so that we don't kind of short circuit our system, and that we're keeping it covered and making sure we're trying to reduce stress as much as possible on our plants. Foliar feeding, I mentioned before, it's basically a bioavailable nutrient blend that you apply once a week throughout the growing season to reduce the stress, as we just talked about. And you want to choose or make a product that provides all the macro and micronutrients, as well as enzymes, enzyme cofactors, and the biostimulants we talked about earlier. So the healthier the plant, the more medicinal it is for people, and the tastier it is too. Because when your plant has everything it needs and starts building these complex compounds within itself, that equates to flavor and also equates to medicinal properties for people. Because when the plant starts making more and more complex compounds, eventually they start making these essential fatty acids, but then they also make essential oils and all kinds of terpenes and all kinds of medicinal compounds that it turns out when we help support our plants to be healthier, they actually support us to be healthier. So that's why this is so important, and that's why I nerd out about this, because it's so amazing that if you take care of the system and you take care of your garden, it will take care of you. To sum that up, the garden health protocol would go something like this. You would want to mineralize and microbialize your soil. You want to make sure you're adding organic matter, either through living roots or compost or mulching. You want to make sure you keep the soil moist without the chlorine or the chloramine in the water source. You want to mulch and keep your soil covered. And you want to microbialize your seeds and your plants. So when you get a seed packet, you want to put a pinch of an inoculant in there. That will kind of give your seeds the allies they need from the time of sprouting and all through their adulthood. They kind of get a good start, just like babies who are breastfed. They get the colostrum, and that helps to give them a good start in life. And then also you want to inoculate your plant roots for your transplants. So you would take the same inoculant that you put in your seed packet, and if you bought transplants, you can just sprinkle it onto the roots once you take them out of the trays. Then the sixth step would be to feed your soil and your plants periodically throughout the growing season to make sure that they have everything they need when they need it, and that they are building up their microbial allies and have all the nutrients they need so that they don't become susceptible to disease or to insects infestation. And this whole system is my favorite way to just grow really flavorful, amazing food and to not have to struggle and try to fight against nature. I get to work with nature and just support it and support the system. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed spending today with you and look forward to sharing more with you in the future. And check out growfoodfilm.com if you want to learn more about what I'm up to. And also check out the bonus for your DIY recipes to make your own awesome garden products. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.